ahead and, oop, that's loose. Yep, call the meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. McKee here, Lanterman.
Here.
Friedrich.
Here.
Behrenkamp.
Here.
Nichols.
Also here.
Perfect. I'd like to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, agenda approval. Saw there's one added item. Anything else from staff besides 9A?
9A was the only addition.
Okay, anything from council? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
So moved. Nichols.
Second, Behrenkamp.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. And then we are on to, we have one presentation today, our financial quarterly report, and I believe Keisha's going to be doing that.
And our first financial quarterly report since I've been here. So Keisha is online. And can you hear her? Keisha, can you hear us?
Hi.
Are you up?
Hey, can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you. No. No, it says she's unmuted.
It does say she's unmuted.
Yeah, we can see her, but it's not.
Oh, I know why.
Don't forget to take out your trash cans.
There.
Try it
now.
again.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Technology. Learning and growing. It worked when I talked to her earlier today.
On here.
Yeah. I was in
Yeah,
a Zoom
she
meeting.
should be allowed to unmute.
Yeah. Try it now?
Are you able to hear me?
Oh, we can. I heard something.
Okay, turn up the volume. Pump up the volume. Pump up the volume. That's all the way up. Okay. What about there?
Probably a dial.
The dice.
Battley panic, right? Got close to touching us.
Suggestion.
Try it again.
Are you able to hear me?
Is there another option?
It's very quiet out of that speaker.
Oh, we have to throw it somewhere else. Select the speaker. I hear something.
Yay!
That'll do.
Down a little bit.
Down.
How about now?
There we go.
Yay!
Yay.
Thanks, Keisha.
Perfecto.
Perfect. And actually, Vicky will be the one presenting.
Go to the
Okay.
outer.
There we go. Thank you. Sorry, I did not have the ability to unmute for a moment there, so you must
No
have just
worries.
granted
That
me
was-
ability.
That was on our end. We're figuring it out.
No problem at all. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Vicky Holthouse with Abdo Financial Solutions. Tonight, as Administrator Tobin and Keisha mentioned, I'll be walking through your Q4 report. But before we do that, I did want to just take a brief moment and introduce you to Keisha. Keisha took point for Corcoran when the city signed its long-term engagement with us back in October. However, she had been working behind the scenes for the city all throughout last year, along with me as well. So I just wanted her to be able to unmute real quick and say hello to everyone.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Fantastic. Sorry, go ahead,
Sorry.
Keisha.
I was just going to say, good evening, Council. Again, my name is Keisha Gansky. I am a senior manager here with Abdo Financial Solutions. I joined Abdo about a year and a half ago, and prior to joining Abdo, I spent a decade working in the municipal government sector here in Arkansas in various managerial roles, from accounting supervisor to deputy director of finance and even interim CFO, and it's just a pleasure to meet all of you.
Likewise.
And you, yes.
Thank you, Keisha. Mayor and Council, I do not have the ability to share my screen. If you'd like to grant that ability, I can quick pull up the council packet so that viewers online could follow along. That's up to you. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and get started.
Give us one
Yeah,
second.
let her do that. sure.
Looks like you have it pulled up as well, so I could certainly guide you through it. I have the page numbers noted.
Yeah, let's go with that, Vicki.
Perfect, that sounds good. Well, just starting out, this is page 16 of the packet. It's labeled page 2 of the ABDO report, but again, 16 of the packet. That's our opening compilation disclosure, and it basically just notifies the council that this quarterly financial report, these quarterly financial reports that we'll be producing for you are not audited. However, we do go through a robust review process as we prepare the quarterly financials. That being said, I do want to call out that this is a preliminary look at your 2024 results. Over the next several weeks, we'll be closing out year end and making several adjustments. There are still claims being paid that are for services rendered in 24 that will be posted. So I do just want to give you that frame of mind as we kind of start the presentation. And so with that, I'll ask you to move to page 18 of the PDF of the council packet. And just so the city knows, I only see a Zoom screen right now. I don't see the actual packet up.
I think 18 is the general fund chart. Yeah.
Okay, so on page 18, that illustration is your general fund cash. And I always like to pause here for just a moment because it really does a great job of presenting why in Minnesota the Office of the State Auditor recommends that we have a 35 to 50% general fund reserve. And the reason for that is we go through two kind of peaks and valleys throughout the year. At the beginning of the year, we kind of start at our maximum reserve point. And then we'll dip down our reserves for the first half of the year until we get that first property tax settlement in June. And then the same typically happens for that second half of the year until we get that final property tax payment in December. And so it just does a nice job of iterating or reiterating why the city should maintain those adequate reserves as suggested by the OSA. I'll have you flip over then to page 20 of the packet. And this is your general fund statement of revenues and expenditures. So one more page in, there you go. So what you're seeing here is, again, based on preliminary results, we have about a $200,000 surplus of revenues over expenditures. Again, we will be recording additional accounts payable. We may have some receivables that we post as well, but as of right now, that's just a snapshot of how that year end is looking. Couple things of note, licenses and permit revenue was up from the year prior and up from budget. And this is offsetting some additional increases on the expense side for accounting services as you brought in some consultant help with ABDO last year in the finance department and with HR functions and payroll as well. And then in the engineering department, we did see like a positive variance because we did have a couple of positions there that were not filled in 2024. So there's a positive variance from budget there. Flipping over then to page 22 of the PDF. This is your cash by fund report. And so this shows you the cash that's in every one of the city's funds. So this is a really nice illustration for viewers to see all of the different kind of business enterprises and functions that we're accounting for within the city. And just a couple of things to note on the cash by fund report. As expected, the pavement management fund, as well as the Horseshoe Bend and City Center funds, experienced some cash decreases because we had that planned cash outlay for those road projects. And then, of course, the water fund, we had the tower as well as the water infrastructure projects, which we spent down bond proceeds in that fund. Flipping over then to page 24. Both 24 and 25, I recognize they're a little small, but if you want to just hold it there, it kind of gives at least viewers an understanding of how to navigate this report. So this does a nice job of presenting all of the city's cash and investment holdings. So where you have your cash and investments kind of tied up. Right now, the city is quite liquid. And so one of our goals is to work with the city over the next year to really start to build out a ladder of your investments to be able to maximize when we have some idle funds to be able to maximize interest earnings. And then lastly, I'll point you to page 26 of the packet. The last two reports are on your enterprise funds, your water and sewer fund, and I'll just comment on a couple of things in the water fund because it had a bit more kind of one-time activity than the sewer fund had. So in the water fund, you're seeing a couple of things here. Interest earnings were higher because we had some additional funds with the bond proceeds where we were able to accrue and earn interest throughout 2024. And then on the expense side of things, we had some higher engineering related to the tower and the infrastructure project. And then, of course, some increased debt service because of the new bonds that came online for those infrastructure projects. So with that, I will pause, take any questions from council, but we really appreciated the opportunity tonight to walk you through that first quarterly report from ABDO. Going forward, you can expect to receive quarterly financial reports from us, but I'll take any questions from council.
Any questions? Jeremy?
I had one. I really appreciate page 24 showing the interest on the city's balances. I'm interested in knowing, do we currently have a solid process that we're happy with for how we allocate that interest to various other city accounts?
That's an excellent question. So the process we follow is a standard process that most cities will use, and that is on a monthly basis. We take a snapshot of cash and all of the various funds and do a pro rata allocation. Now, when there's bond proceeds specifically in play, we will make sure that we account for those bond proceeds interests separately or uniquely.
If I could speak to that. So I've talked with some of you about coming up in March, we're hoping to bring forward discussion to have get clarity and guidance on an investment strategy to ensure that what we have, we can benefit from interest. It would also be a really good opportunity for us to clarify if council has any intent beyond the normal procedure in order to benefit from those proceeds from interest.
And it does look like there's a fairly substantial difference between the money market fund and the 4M fund at various descriptions,
What
different
page
rows
is
in the
that
system. Page 24 in the PDF.
Thanks.
So the money market is 2.3%. The 4M fund lines seem to range between 4.8 and 5.3%. So I think it would make sense to try to shift more of our accounts toward the higher yielding system.
I apologize, Counselor. I think I misunderstood your question. I was interpreting it more from the accounting fund standpoint. So yes, I would agree. I think the city will want to leverage the highest yield opportunities that it can experience as we move forward.
But it was pleasant to see, 1.6 million in interest income over the course of the year. That's a significant fraction of our levy. So it's great to see that we've had some money working for us in 2024.
Any other questions or comments? No? I think we're all good.
All right, thanks, Vicki. Thanks, Keisha.
Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Good evening.
Go ahead and go back to the logo. Then on to open forum. Jay will walk us through that, but this is for items not on tonight's agenda. If anyone would like to come up, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address.
Yeah, and please fill out a card. They're on the cart over there. Name, address, and the topic that you want to have. But for open forum, you have to come up. You speak to the council. You have 5 minutes to address them on anything that is not on the agenda.
Okay. We will move on. On to consent agenda consisting of items 6A through 6P. Does anyone want to pull anything?
I would like to pull 6G, K, and L.
G, K, and L. I had G as well. Anyone else?
N, please.
N. The police.
Yep.
Oh, they're both police. Inauguration sport one.
Which one is that?
N, Nancy.
Thank you.
N as in
Don't call me Nancy.
After M.
November.
M as in Mancy. Okay. Anything else? We have G, K, L, N. If If not, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A through F, H through J, M, O, and P.
So moved. Nichols.
Second, Van Camp. Beat you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll just go down the line. Start with G. Jeremy, did you want to?
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody else wants to look at anything beyond this. I had a concern about the wording in the red line addition to, on page 247, adding item 9, that in the I-1 and Business Park District only, we would permit smooth finished concrete panels as a Class 1 material. Looking through the packet and the images that were shown in the literature, some of them I thought would be fine, and I would treat them as a Class 1. Others I thought were too institutional and almost like a parking garage kind of a surface. And I wouldn't want to treat those as Class 1 by policy. I think this might need to get modified either to call out some specific features or characteristics of those panels, or else make it subject to council review at the time of the application.
Okay. I would be open to those discussions. My initial thought on it was I was more okay with that change in the I-1 district, not as much in the BP business park. So my suggestion was going to be to amend the resolution to remove the business park on that same line. How do you feel about just in industrial?
I think even in industrial, I think we could do, I think if we get some of these up, they're not going to look like what we want Corcoran to look like. They'll look like Rogers.
Do you
or
have suggested
a more industrial city.
language?
Can I make one comment before you do,
Please.
Councilmember Nichols? So it's important to remember that we're talking about one district, which is essentially one set of buildings. So I'm not diminishing the importance of getting it right, but also I just want to emphasize that the decision is going to impact one development if it's only I-1. If we were to add BP2, then it's going to impact 2.
What about the development on 55? Is
That's
that
not in the
I?
Northeast District.
Oh, this is the district-specific items, okay.
So do you have potential language that,
I would say subject to council approval, just add that to the end. I'm fine taking out BP.
okay, let's see here, so where would you put that in there?
So I would have it read, per your suggestion, removing BP, in the I-1 district only, smooth finished concrete panels, subject to council review and approval.
Natalie, Kendra, and John, any concerns or comments on that? And Dwight?
I would say the only concern is I think just from a staff level, it'd be helpful to understand which ones you're talking about
Sure.
that you'd be having
If you
a
can bring the
problem with.
packet up, I can give you my opinions. Other councilors might disagree, but I can at least share my concerns. So the problematic ones, I thought, were on page 268. And 275. But there were others that I thought looked great, or could look great. 278, I thought had some good choices on it. 279 looked good. 280 looked good.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm like about a minute behind you.
Sorry.
You got enough?
I'll pause.
So your proposed language would basically allow it as that material, subject to, they just have to come in when they're doing their preliminary, show the type
Right,
that they'd do, and we'd say whether or not that meets.
correct.
The
Does that
class
meet the
one.
intent of the Northeast District? Is it a class?
Otherwise, what is it currently, class 3?
Yes. It's currently class 3.
So if it didn't meet it, would it still be allowed as a class 3 material?
I would say, yeah.
And just to make sure we're talking about this, so 265, that is not an example of a smooth finish. So, and then what was the other one you said you didn't like?
275,
275 is also not an example of a smooth finish that would be considered class 1. So we're talking about the smooth finish would be the only one considered class 1, all the rest would be class 3.
So which ones are smooth finish?
Okay, smooth finish you can find on page 273, 272, 273, is that it? So we've limited it to what's on for 272 and 273. We are saying that's the only one that's acceptable as a class 1. I will note that we didn't really find an example of another city that has defined it to this extent, so we are confident this will allow for a higher level quality than you would see in our surrounding cities.
Okay. Yeah, those aren't the worst offenders. I think those could be okay.
So if it's just limited to that, like I believe is what you're saying is in the draft, does that alleviate your concern about the specific approval?
I mean, I guess it might be helpful to include photos as references
Sure.
to the Northeast District guidance, so that it's clear to future applicants what we actually intended that to mean.
Absolutely.
Do you need a motion on that, or can you do it just on consensus?
The point was that we actually set that on.
It was, I thought it was written to just include those two. The other ones were just examples of what were possible.
One of the things I talked to some of you about is Fabcon, who builds this, is in Savage, and what shows up in the photo looks way different if you drive down, and they have it, it's all displayed.
Yeah.
And as I was doing a construction project in Shakopee, I thought that I liked something until I saw what it looked like huge. And so the nicer, more refined finishes, you will see in the packet a building that I used to be responsible for. I hated that finish. I had to look at it every day. And so I agree with you, 275 would not be my favorite.
So as far as an example, part of the reason why we feel this was an oversight and how it was initially drafted, the district standards, is the bottom picture there on page 294 of the packet does say class 1 materials industrial, and that is an example of a smooth finish. We could certainly add some additional language right there to clarify a smooth finish, but we do have a visual example of what that smooth finish would be.
Let me just look at that.
Yeah.
I would say, so there's a caption, class 1 materials industrial. I would maybe put smooth finish panel on that image,
Okay.
so that it's clear that's what that is.
Mhm.
And that's what we would be expecting if somebody comes in and says, yes, this is a smooth finish panel. No, it doesn't look like this.
We can certainly make that change, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so with the change to the actual guidelines, and then I'll make a motion here shortly unless there's any other comments or, Mark?
Yeah. You know, we're talking about finishes, but do we have a project application in front of us asking for this? Like, why are we talking about finishes if we don't have a project in front of us?
I think we will have one.
Well, but then shouldn't we wait until the application is in front of us before we talk about finishes?
You don't need to process it all at the same time, so these are some larger issues that we went ahead and proceeded with. The applicant for this will have an application coming along line. If this were to not get approved, that means they need to revise their plans. So they're trying to understand how they would need to revise those plans in order to comply. However, these are items also that have been were pointed out to staff as an inconsistency in terms of material, and the other items were things that have come up with other applications and other scenarios that staff has been aware of, and it's been on even part of our list as our commercial industrial update. So that's why it is in front of you right now, in order to allow for someone to come in with an application, because a variance would not be appropriate to address these.
Okay, thank you.
And is this the one we have the EAW in the packet for as
Correct.
well?
Yes.
So it's imminent-ish.
Yes.
Ish.
Anything else?
I do have one question of clarity. Now that we've just clarified what we meant by smooth finish, does that change at all in terms of how it would be applied in the business park district versus industrial?
I would still like to keep it just to industrial personally, but I think that's what we're gonna vote on.
Okay.
All right. then I will make a motion to amend resolution, do we have the number? I lost it here.
What page is it?
Let's see here, my navigation's not working where I click on it.
It's 2025-543.
2025-5,
43. So that's the ordinance number.
yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense, okay, yep.
I don't see,
Do you see what page that's on?
well,
It's-
250 is the ordinance.
This
What
sum-
fooled me, this got motioned and seconded by on the ordinance page.
Mr. Mayor, we've got 3 items. We have the ordinance number 2025-543, for the actual change, the summary ordinance 2025-544, and then the resolution with the findings of fact is 25-14.
Okay, so I would make a motion to amend ordinance 2025-543, class 1, item 9, that's the second page of the ordinance, to just say in the I-1 district only, smooth finish concrete panels. And that would be my only change.
And I would like to make a friendly that we also indicate to staff that they update the caption for the image for the Olympus building in the district standard to indicate that that image is intended to illustrate
Yeah.
the smooth finish concrete panel.
That works, I think. I'll take that as a friendly. Do I have a second?
Second. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Michelle. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Perfect. K, who pulled that one?
I think that was me also.
Chairman?
I had pulled both K and L just to thank our commissioners for their continued interest.
Oh, yes, you're right. Sorry, Jeremy. I forgot to actually go back and then approve. Can I do it by a motion to approve consent agenda item 6G as modified? I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Thanks, John. K, Jeremy.
So I wanted to thank our returning planning commissioner, Corinne Drummond, who has volunteered to serve again for another term. A lot of what the city is going to develop into will be first touched by the Parks and Trails and Planning Commission, so it's great to have citizen engagement in those groups. If anybody has a couple spare hours per month, I would encourage you to apply. It can be a really fun way to serve your city and get an advanced view of what's coming and help to shape it in a way that's true to the values that Corcoran has always held.
And if you have an interest in the watershed, we desperately need a watershed commissioner that we've been advertising every meeting and everywhere we can. And even if you're not interested, help spread the word. We'd really appreciate it because we really need someone.
So I just wanted to acknowledge Corinne for volunteering to come back again.
Yeah.
And then I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve item 6K.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
L.
And then 6L, the same thing, just for different people. Commissioner Tom Anderson has been serving our Parks and Trails Commission for many, many years. He's had a lot of organizational knowledge, and he volunteers consistently doing a lot of great things for the city. He's actually our interim watershed commissioner as well. And we also have Jonathan also volunteering to go back through for another term. So once again, it's great to acknowledge these folks, happy that they're with us, and hope they continue to serve.
Absolutely. Okay. Want to make a motion?
I will move to approve 6L.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then finally, we had N. Dean.
Yes, huge. If folks don't know what it is, it's Police Department inauguration support. We sent, I believe, 4 people volunteered, 3 volunteered.
We sent 3.
Huge honor, I'm sure. I wanted to thank them for volunteering and such. It was cold, so I hope they still had a enjoyable time and such. And then the nicest thing that came out of all of that, it didn't come out of our budget. So that was the number one thing I wanted to make sure people understood, that I don't remember the cost, but it was a good thing for our police department to be there. Many
Yeah.
different jurisdictions from all over the United States were invited to participate, and it's pretty cool.
It's the first time Corcoran sent inauguration support too.
Yep.
Yep.
Pretty neat
Very
stuff,
cool.
so.
I saw some of the pictures that looked like a cool
Yeah.
event, special event.
So with that, motion to approve 9N, or 6N, excuse me.
All right, do we have a second? I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Damn, I missed you.
Aye.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry.
No, no worries. Sometimes I just try to focus on all four of you at once and I'll miss one. Alrighty, so we are through consent. On to planning. We'll have a public comment opportunity here for items. Let's try it for 6A, B, or I'm sorry, for 7A, B, and C. And if we need to break it up into individual ones, we can do so. So if you'd like to speak on 7A, B, or C, please head on up to the podium. If you're not the applicant, if you're the applicant, we'll give you some time.
Staff will give a brief as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right, then we will go into 7A.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Yeah, tonight, item 7A is the Schmid's Hidden Valley 3rd Edition Concept Plan. This is an application brought to you tonight from Michael and Judith Ball, who are requesting informal feedback on a subdivision concept plan on their property of 21900 Oakdale Drive. This parcel is currently a 28.26 acre outlot from the Schmid's Hidden Valley 2nd Edition and is currently being utilized on the west side for agricultural purposes, and on the east side is vacant wooded area surrounding the creek that runs through the property. The property itself is currently zoned rural residential and guided rural/ag residential, and is located outside of the 2040 MUSA area. So it's subject to the development rights program and currently contains 4 development rights. The concept plan itself consists of 3 single-family lots and 0 outlots, ranging in size from about 3.5 acres to just shy of 21 acres. Each lot contains a primary and alternate septic site, and 2 of the existing seasonally flooded basins are being proposed to be utilized as stormwater management ponds in the concept plan. All 3 of these proposed lots would receive access from a shared private drive off of Oakdale Drive, which I'll get into a little bit more later on in the report. Reviewing this against the rural residential district standards, it appears that the proposal complies with all of the applicable standards. The only one that's undefined right now is the maximum principal building height, which isn't uncommon at the concept level, and that would be reviewed more thoroughly with a building permit application. But going back into the streets and access for the site, the proposal is on Oakdale Drive, which is classified as a minor collector road in the 2040 comp plan. City practice has been to limit direct access points on collector roads through redirecting them to local streets, just to reduce access points and improve safety on these busy roads. And with this application, with this parcel, it was previously approved as an outlot from the Schmid's Hidden Valley 2nd Edition in 2013. And on the screen to the right is an image of the preliminary plat from that 2nd edition, which identified a potential future road alignment, which would extend High Bluff Lane from the south and would cut through the site through the northwest area of the outlot. The staff report from that addition noted that the future road alignment would be determined once this parcel was developed. And with this application, staff had a chance to go through an infrastructure feasibility study last fall and determined where that alignment would actually be, and the findings of that report found that that alignment would actually be better suited more towards the west in alignment with what the applicant is proposing the area of the private drive is on the concept plan before you tonight. But the applicant's proposal itself does illustrate a shared private drive instead of a public roadway. And staff does have concerns with this, as it would create some significant impacts towards some of the longer standing internal street network plans for this area, and could impact future subdivisions within the vicinity. So staff recognizes that there are a couple of particular areas that you may want to provide feedback to the applicant on as they decide to proceed with this application. Namely, would there be support for a shared access easement instead of a right-of-way easement? Or would there be more support for dedication of right-of-way and would allow the applicant to install a private drive within the right-of-way? And if so, would the city be open to taking on the future responsibility of upgrading this private drive to a public road once adjacent parcels subdivide and develop in the future? So at this point, staff recommends that the city council review and discuss the concept plan and provide the applicant with informal comments. And again, any opinions or comments provided to the applicant by the city council are considered advisory only and shall not constitute a binding decision of the request.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? Start us off.
I had a question on if it's done as a right-of-way instead of a private drive, would it need a turn lane as well on Oakdale, or would that not be needed because only serving 3 lots?
I would have to defer to the engineers, but I don't believe with the volume of homes being constructed in this development that it would require that turn lane.
Yeah, this development doesn't trigger turn lanes. Future developments may warrant that, but that's not being considered at this time.
Would a future development, imagining 15 years from now, say 4 or 5 additional homes go in to the west or to the north, would there be a mechanism for that development to cover the cost of the road being built in the right-of-way to service that new development? Or would it have to be the city that does it?
Probably.
I mean, if we're speaking decades in the future, I don't know what the statutory regulations are, so it's a pretty broad hypothetical, so I couldn't really guarantee an answer. I guess what I would say is in situations, at least how I understand past practice, is in situations where we believe the road can be extended, we typically haven't permitted the private drive. Probably to avoid that confusion and issue later. So where we don't believe a public road is needed, we still take easement, but we have, I guess, proceeded with that. That's my understanding of private roads.
Okay.
Yeah, I can just add a little bit to that. In our ordinance, we say that private drives are only allowed when we determine that a larger road network connection is not needed. So just that alone would require a variance, and so that gets a little more challenging. And then to Kevin's point, we are not aware of an example where we've taken right-of-way and then allowed for a private drive to go in that right-of-way. We have allowed a single user driveway to go in some instances, but that single user has also agreed that they are responsible for the full cost later on when it does need to get upgraded to a public street. And then the other aspect of that is we're dealing with one user. Once we have a private drive established with multiple different residents, that becomes politically challenging as well once that date comes. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had thought we didn't do private drives anymore, shared private drives. I thought we were saying no to stuff like that.
It's very dependent on the
Yep.
set of facts. We have in our zoning ordinance, we do allow for private drives when there is no need for a larger roadward connection.
Okay.
But we start with the assumption that we need to find connections to support a larger road network, so we don't have a whole bunch of one-offs. of
It's
private
gonna be a
drives.
while before
Yeah.
that comes out here.
So, so I would say that it's not that it doesn't happen, but in this particular instance, a road network connection has been envisioned for several years.
On the comp plan.
Not,
then-
I would have to look at our comp plan, but it was part of the approvals for when this Outlot A and Outlot B, Schmitz
Gotcha.
and Valley were approved.
Gotcha.
And then who's gonna be responsible to write the contract to plow that road and such? And will it be gravel, will it be tar, will it be
If
Is
it was
it
a
too early
private
to
drive,
ask?
or if it was,
shared private drive is the problem that I have is everybody gonna get along? What's gonna happen?
Yeah, private drives have their own set of challenges and maintenances. The long-term cost of maintenance can be difficult, and we received a couple calls just this year, actually maybe it was end of last year, of people on private drives that were wanting to go through the process to upgrade to a city street because they weren't getting along for whatever reason.
Yep.
But the cost of that is also very challenging, and so those requests tend to go away, and so they are left in a situation that's less than ideal. But yeah, there's pros and cons to each, and so.
Can I ask a question?
yes, of course.
Do you have like just a proposed drawing of what that roadway might look like?
It was just.
Was it just
Yeah,
up?
did you say it was?
Yeah, the
Oh, gotcha.
location has
Okay.
already changed because of the feasibility study. It was determined that having that move further west, where his pointer is ideal because of the sightline.
Yeah, the sightlines.
Oh, I see.
It needs to be further west
Needs to
because
be-
of,
yeah.
yep,
And-
no, I agree with that too.
And that matched up with what the applicant had desired to. They had wanted it further west, so it was something that we felt we could handle on Outlot B. Whenever that comes in, we'll have to change the alignment on there as well.
So it just changed the location of some of those 3 lots. If we did it that way, with the road going all the way through up.
So the lots on the concept plan would, like, if the private drive were to be changed out with a public road, this would align with what the findings were from the infrastructure studies. So the actual touchdown point on Oakdale Drive is correct, but the actual means of what's installed is, I think, what the hang-up is.
Gotcha. Any other thoughts?
If it's a public road, does that mean that it's a paved public road?
I,
Yes, according to our standards, I think there's a rural option and a curved option, but they're both paved.
Where is that leading you?
Well, I feel the tension about, I want people to be able to access, like, if I had a parcel like this and I wanted to create a couple lots for family or something like that, I'd want to be able to have that be feasible. I don't know what the cost of a public street in a development like that would be and what that would do to the prospect of doing it, when we're so far away from the prospect of needing a street in that area. And there's impacts to the city as well, because then the city has to maintain the public street for a decade or 2 or 3 until, and in case further development in that area ends up happening.
And it's a dead-end street then.
And it's a dead-end street. So then you're talking about a cul-de-sac that has to get plowed out every time we get 2 inches of snow. So I could be persuaded either way. I'd be interested in hearing what the rest of council thinks.
I'm okay with a private street. I just want the people that are going to purchase it understand they're responsible for it. And then the one parcel that's 20.95 acres that wraps around and such, that's gonna be that way until development comes out there, right? I don't want anybody saying, I got 20 acres, I got 2 building rights. No, it's all part of the agreement, it's all part of the mindset that they have 1 building right on that 20 acres, on the top one.
So Councilor Vanderkamp,
Yes.
it's unclear, that right now, the
One lot.
outlot as a whole has 4 development rights. With this application, they would utilize 3 of those, so it's unclear what the distribution of that last development rate
this
would be.
is-
They maybe
So
could
it's-
add one
It's
more.
potential,
How
It's
does this
possible
got,
it could be.
how does this have 4 development rights when it was 28 acres?
It's because of previous subdivisions, and this is what's left. So there
I'll
was a
trust
much,
ya.
there was a much
I'll
larger
trust ya.
property at one point, and this is how the rights have, these are the remaining rights.
So concept is this could come back with 4 building rights on it. And a,
Or there'd be 2, one of them could potentially
Yeah,
split.
so, yeah, in the future, one of the lots could future subdivide if it met all of our standards, and/or if one of the lots around, that were adjacent, they could potentially, do a plat to move development rights over, but it would have to be an adjacent property, so.
okay,
So how would it work if we were to allow the private drives now and then, what, 10 years later, subsequent development comes in, we need road there?
Well, I do want to say, my understanding is the property to the south has sold. So I don't know that it's never going to happen, that's never going to be in front of us. And I can't give you a timeline, they haven't spoke with us, but my understanding is that it has sold. And then as far as how it works 10 years from now, I think I might have to use Kevin's. It's hard to say what that looks like. I think what we would have to do is we would have to have an agreement in place that these parties, how we've handled it for the single users that have a driveway in the right-of-way, they would have to agree that the city can determine at any point that they are responsible for the cost to have this turn into a public street when that connection's desired, and then it would probably be a city-driven property at that point. I'm sorry, city-driven project at that point. It might be developer-driven. It's hard to tell, especially if the maintenance does become a nightmare and they want to trigger it sooner, we'd also have to contemplate that. So there's, James, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would do our best to try to consider these different eventualities within an agreement, but we also, it's difficult to say what changes could happen legally, or even just what situation is going to be in front of us in 10 years that's triggering that discussion.
Gotcha.
If I could ask, with these larger lots, which I like the larger lots, but will this have any impact on unrelated projects requiring, based on the Met Council's density requirements?
Because it's outside the
No,
municipal.
these are
Does this-
outside the municipal.
Oh, it is? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good question.
Lucky for the landowner. Congratulations.
Can I add just a comment?
Yeah, please.
From my experience and knowing what happens with shared driveways, unfortunately, it doesn't always end well in the long term. And if there's a road planned in that area in the future of Corcoran, and it's something that staff has set forth of trying to adhere to, I feel like it's fair to take a closer look at what that's going to look like, and maybe have that as a consideration in the plan. Not that I'm opposed to shared driveways, I just know that as a rule, the city has been trying to eliminate shared driveways because they do pose kind of a problem for the city in future years, is what the experience has been.
So you're saying you'd like to see how with the
With the-
road and how the lots would be split up
Yep.
there? Yeah, I would agree with that.
How many building rights are there in the properties to the west and the south?
If my memory serves me correct, the property to the south has 4 as well, and then the property to the west has 1 right now, but it's possible that the remaining development right from this outlot could be pooled together with that and could create 2 lots in the future, or 4 with an open space preservation plat.
And I'll just add, there's also property rights remaining to the north, and then even to the west of the property immediately west. and north of that as well. So there are property rights within this vicinity, I'm sorry, development rights within this vicinity.
I agree with what you said, that I'd like to see how that looks. It's hard to kind of make a determination without knowing how that looks. And I know we have the plat from the second edition, but that's slightly gonna be altered if we went that route.
So if this gets approved, the landing point really for this whole outlot Schmitz Third is gonna be on the west side. So engineering took a look at that.
Oh, like
with this
literally on the
application. So
property.
they would mirror that. So if the road goes north from Oakdale, the property to the south is gonna have to plan for that and mirror it. And that's simply due to this, that's the safest spot to access Oakdale Road.
When you say to the west there, you mean like on the property line?
So where they're showing the
Where
private
the
drive,
pointer is right
that's
now.
where we want the right of way.
Gotcha.
So this applicant was required to look at that. They're matching where we want them to match in terms of connecting to Oakdale. That's by engineering standards and site distances and sight lines for it to it's a busy road. It's got a lot of curves and ups and downs and horizontal curves, and that's the spot that we would require them to connect, or strongly require them to connect. There's a lot of near misses, if not some fatalities in the near vicinity here.
Gotcha.
And so the property to the west, when they come in, they're going to need, based on engineering standards, to use that same access point, just like any of the properties to the south. So there's only, when you look at that road alignment, there's only so many spots where you should have a connection. So all the properties around here are gonna wanna use that landing point. And that's kind of that's why staff, myself, believe it really should be the spot that we funnel the traffic through. There's the connectivity, but there's also the safety. In this case, that meets engineering standards landing point.
So
Some of the other spots don't.
If we took it on as a road and took the right of way, I'm assuming that wouldn't be constructed particularly soon. Or
What's
would
that?
if we took the right of way and did it the non-private driveway, would the road be constructed in the foreseeable future, or
It would be constructed with the
with this?
development.
Okay.
And so the
That
right
answers
of way,
my
the
next
right of way
question.
parallels the west property line and goes far enough north where it's going to allow some sort of access from the property to the west. So, the distance north is more tied to the lot size requirements, but it's sufficient to allow the property to the west to connect to it. That would be reviewed later, but it's gonna be challenging. We didn't specifically evaluate the property to the left, but knowing this area, that's really the only landing spot
For it.
that we know today, so that's why we wanna,
No.
we would advise that you keep a ability to funnel any future traffic to that spot.
Okay, thank you.
So I think it can't be only a private drive. At a minimum, it's got to be a right-of-way that would either require a street now, or you could trigger a street when other events force it.
Yeah, you'd have to figure out how to word that and how to make that binding, but it probably is easiest to have it be done as part of the development, to be honest.
Mayor, excuse
Yeah.
me if I may, can I address that point? Related to the cost of the construction of the road, that bend to the northwest there, if we determine that this development is primarily benefited from it and it's on this property, probably your best opportunity as far as the collection of the full cost to make it a public road is through this application. I understand the points about it maybe not being the most practical to have a public road kind of to nowhere at the moment, but if it's going to serve this development into the future, that would be sort of the most conservative way to do that.
Gotcha.
Another way you could do it, if you wanted to delay that consideration, is you could take it as right-of-way, have it be dedicated right-of-way, and then do an encroachment agreement over the top of it for it to be allowed to be used for this access use temporarily. The downside of doing that is when the road is built, you're going to do that encroachment agreement with some sort of provision that these properties would fund this portion of that road project. You won't know the cost of that, neither will the owners. You basically have to encumber those properties into the future with an unknown cost.
That
which-
will go up.
Correct,
now,
which,
yeah.
which is, the unpredictability of that is sometimes problematic.
Gotcha. Thank you. I think I'm leaning that way of making it a road. Just out of the difficulty of trying to do it later and the difficulty that often pops up with private drives, unfortunately. But I'm open to what you guys think.
I agree. I did, just knowing what we know about all the other private drives and stuff, I'd rather it be that up front. Again, it's a concept, so they're taking our input and running with it, so it's just, yikes.
Okay.
Unless it's no, it wouldn't even work there. I was gonna say unless it's like a family compound where brothers, sisters, and everybody in the whole family owns the place, and the agreement is somebody's gotta take care of it, and it goes from there, but,
Still can get
Don't
tricky.
get sold.
it can get very, very complicated.
So I think our preference and our unofficial feedback is that we would like to do the road there instead of the private drives. So feedback to the applicant on that regard, but I'm thinking if there's some crazy outside the box solution that we're not thinking of and staff hasn't thought of, I don't know if there is, but if there is, the applicant can bring it to us and we'd certainly love to hear it and evaluate that as well.
Then the recommendation would be Kevin, you said 2 roads, one with curb and gutter and everything, and then one more of a rural tarred road?
Yeah.
Be kinda like Bechtold Farm Road and stuff like that, okay.
One's ditches and the other is curb.
Yep.
Depending on what you do, it could matter, but there's different options, I believe.
Yeah.
I know for sure in OS&P, I don't know about this, we can work with them on that, but it's a paved road if it's public, we don't accept gravel on public roads anymore.
Gotcha. So I think that covers the big issue. Are there any
Yep.
other items council wanted to comment on or ask questions on? The applicant or staff has?
I think that was the biggest conflict that we needed to get some feedback on, so.
Cool. Okay, we're good. The applicant wanna?
So a lot of it, you guys, sorry, my name's Mike. I'm one of the applicants. I'm the son of Judith Ball. And I'll kind of give you a little concept of what we're trying to do here, really. So my mother, she lives down in Iowa, in a town called New Hampton, Iowa. It's a small rural town south of Rochester, about an hour or so. In this lot, we bought this lot for the fact trying to build a single level on lot 1, the bigger lot, the 20 acres. We're trying to build a single level family home for her that kind of matches her home down in Iowa, but is up here. Me and Judy, of course, we are not Lennar, we're not a $31 billion publicly traded company, so building a city road is just not feasible for us. We just don't have the capital to do it, you just can't do it. Also with the building rights that are left on the property, since building rights have already been established and given away, we only have 4 building rights left. So for us to actually list these lots for sale and try to recoup the cost to build the road, there's just not enough lots to be able to do so. So at that point in time, we feel like now the land is devalued and no developer is gonna come in and buy the land because they can't even recoup the cost to sell the lots to build the city road of the infrastructure that's needed to build the city road, curb, gutters, the city standards. My mom's not getting any younger, so this is why we're trying to, figure out a solution sooner than later. Let's see here. A lot of it, Dwight did a really good job. I know our goal was to do a private drive and then of course give a right of way to continue the city's plans of their internal road network that's been in place since 1994. So that's kind of what our thought process was behind it. In regards to the 20 acres, that right side.
It's all wetland, I just blew it up.
Oh,
So,
you did?
yep, no, I can see
So
there's
we got-
not much is gonna happen over there.
Yeah, not much. We got trail cams all over, so we got deer, you know, we love it.
Beautiful place.
River Creek down in Iowa has 2 creeks going through it. This had a creek going through it, so that's kind of why we end up picking lot 1. And really, that's kind of as much as I have. So I appreciate your guys' consideration and feedback, and I would, you know, wish or strongly encourage that you kind of rethink your thoughts about the public road, because again, we're just Mike and Judy, just ordinary people, trying to get our foot in the door in Corcoran and become landowners and homeowners of City of Corcoran. I'd love to do more in the community. I do, well, I'm on a board of an association that I'm part of, and I do a lot of kind of these sorts of things. So I love to be part of the community, but again, we're trying to get our foot in the door first before we can do so. But yeah, any questions for me that I guess?
Well, I thought that you were very compelling. You have my support.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Can I ask, would you have wanted to, like your family system, would you occupy more than one of the lots on the property?
There's been talk about it. Right now, I live in Maple Grove, off East Fishland Road. My brother lives in St. Michael. So there's talk about my brother possibly selling and wanting to buy one of the lots. I have many friends that are interested in buying the lots. But in regards to an indefinite answer, I can give you I can give you that answer. But lot 1 would entail to stay in our family for generations to come. As we are, you know, originally from Iowa, enjoy the rural feeling and reason we came to City of Corcoran.
Question for staff. If this was only going to be developed as 1 lot instead of 3, would it require a road?
I think if it was 1 lot, then I think we would be more comfortable taking the right of way and doing a single driveway user, because then we can have a clear agreement saying that you're aware and responsible that we could require this out of public street and you'll be responsible for that cost. I think and then we're not dealing with the maintenance concerns between multiple parties that continuously come up. Also, it wouldn't be a private drive, so we wouldn't have to worry about getting that variance, because right now all I'm hearing are the economic considerations, and while I sympathize with that sincerely, that can't be the reason why we grant a variance. So that's where we get hung up. But if it was a driveway for a single user, I think that is we have examples of where we put those agreements in place that I think we could do much easier than trying to work out a private drive agreement that calls out for this eventuality.
I have a quick question.
Well,
Sorry,
I
go
had a
ahead.
follow-up.
Okay, go ahead.
If there were a single a single building right consumed, can they do an ADU in this part of the city? Like if they wanted to have a primary home and then like a secondary unit for another person as part of the family, is that permissible in the rural area?
Yes, we actually have 2 options in the rural area. You can do an accessory dwelling unit of 960 feet by administrative permit, square feet, sorry, by administrative permit, and then up to 1,100 square feet by conditional use permit. So you could do that as either attached unit or a detached unit. So
Okay, so then there could be an option.
Does that require a family?
it does not require a family, but you cannot it can't be separated from the home. So you can't try to sell the ADU. That's kind of, there's some language in there.
You can't subdivide.
Yeah, you can't subdivide. Theoretically, you could do 1,100 square feet, and you might be able to subdivide in this instance for rural residential later on. But if you're doing the 960, you wouldn't be able to, because you wouldn't be able to meet the minimum residential standards.
But with a detached approach, you could potentially put effectively 2 units, 1 primary and then an accessory unit, which would get you part of what you want.
Go ahead.
Oh, just a follow-up question. Is there a way to kind of work with the city and forfeit a building rate? So right now there's 4 building rates. I know a big conversation was, well, what's going to happen with this last building rate? And ideally, the last building rate would probably be on lot 1. Is there a way to, any concern of forfeiting a building rate?
you can just leave the building rights idle associated with the property forever. You could potentially sell it to a neighbor if they have a project that they wanted.
Adjacent neighbor to
Yeah,
it.
adjacent neighbor. Well, neighbors are adjacent, right? But you don't have to worry about not consuming it, certainly.
Can I ask that question? So that was going to be part of my question is if you split the parcel in two, the area that's all kind of like wetland, that might be a great piece of property that you could assign building rights to, keep some building rights on the main parcel and assign, can you do that to that other parcel? So if someone were to buy that property to the right and develop it, you could potentially sell to have more building rights on that parcel that's adjacent to it.
We're talking about the east side, putting the development rights on the east side?
Yes, or the west side, either side.
Okay, yeah, I mean, where the creek is, I think that'd be really challenging to truly develop that.
But if it's
think
a
she's
situation where there could be buffering, if it was like of interest to a developer that needed to have that space for,
You're saying if
Open
the
space
property
or-
on the east or west
right,
developed?
right.
I
Yeah.
think I understand. So you're saying, or asking, could the applicant like subdivide, let's say where my cursor is, just like down this line here and assign the remaining development rights to
Exactly.
this future outlot, which could in the future be pooled together with this
Correct.
parcel?
I don't
I
think
wouldn't
they
recommend
need
it
to.
because there's no access right now.
I don't think they need to. I think if you keep that as
Yeah.
You could
one
still
line, you could
transfer
still
it east
transfer it either way.
without
Okay.
having to split.
Or west,
Okay.
right?
You can go east, west, or north, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. As an option.
Now you mentioned your concern about the financial feasibility of doing the road now. Do you have any thoughts on if we were able to find a way to, I think it was brought up as a hypothetical earlier, to allow in the short term the private drive with the option that the city can then when another property develops, take that right away and turn it into a road, and being able to fund it then. Do you foresee that still being a problem?
I mean, the information I've got in regards to the site, I mean, you're looking at, depending on how far that road goes, but let's say that far, I mean, Scott, how much that cost would be? Spitball, I guess.
We're estimating somewhere, if it were a public road, with all stormwater ponding and everything that goes along with it, it'd be somewhere between 500 and 600,000.
Yeah, so I mean, we're open to putting an assessment on the house and paying it off over time, but it's just, again, Mike and Judy, it's just not capital that we have.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it gets maybe feasible if you had like 3 or 4 lots on the western side that were also developing, and now you're splitting it 8 ways or 6 ways instead of 3. But to me, it seems the most feasible. Think about it as a single lot and build what you want that way. I'm open to exploring the other approach, but you're still running a risk that way. But the advantage of the single lot approach is you don't need to worry about the road. You just have the right of way carved out, and you're just building a driveway.
Yeah, I'd say that's a potential route. And like I said, if there's some creative solution that we're not coming up with tonight, we'd feel free to bring it back to us and reach out, and we'd love to hear it and evaluate that. But I think in general right now, sounds like council's leaning towards the road option as the application is right now.
And I would support the private drive.
And Margaret's okay.
I want to support the private drive, I just don't want the headaches down the road.
Yeah.
Now, why, if there are problems with the private driveway, why is that a city issue? Why isn't that a neighbor issue?
It is.
That's for them.
I agree with Mark.
If they can't get along, I'm not paying for the plowing. What do we care? That's a neighborhood issue.
I agree, I'm just being
Oh, no, I
up front
get
and
it.
forward.
No, I
I
get
just,
that. I
at
wanna
one
hear
point,
what
we
you
said
say.
we weren't gonna do our city, the previous council's mayors, and then some that used to be on here said we weren't gonna do shared private drives anymore. So, I mean, does it turn
No, I get it.
like the same thing that, I mean, you live in a private area and you
Right.
paid the roads and all of that stuff, but again, we're back to putting tar in and those kind of things, and then they have an association amongst the three of them.
Yes.
But this would be a gravel road.
And then when it develops to the east or west, most likely to the west or south.
They'd still be on the hook at some point,
Right.
putting in the paved road because of. But
Right.
then that cost would be distributed amongst how much out there. And we're talking a long time before that stuff comes out here, I think. But I don't know.
It's hard to know.
I don't have a good crystal ball.
Yeah.
That was the only comment that I was gonna make in terms of, right now, the road is cost prohibitive. You're not getting rid of the cost of the road, you're just delaying the cost of the
Yeah.
road.
Which is
And
likely to
that's
go
just an important
up.
distinction.
Yeah.
If the cost of the road is prohibitive now, as the cost of materials go up, it's
going
not
down.
gonna get cheaper, and it's still, that cost is distributed just over those 3 homes, because the road that goes wherever the rest of it is. So that's how it hits the city. When it comes time to, we have to put the road in, and they don't have the means to do it, then either, that becomes a significant city problem.
And then we may have to assess.
I just want to add that if we do go to a scenario where we take right away and it's just a single user driveway, there's still, those agreements still typically have that same requirement that they are responsible for the cost of the road upgrade later on. And in that situation, there's only one lot now that's being assessed for the entire road improvement. So it doesn't completely solve it, again, just delays it.
We wouldn't put in a road to serve one lot.
No, but when, it'd be the same situation though, where we're taking the right of way to allow for the road network for future subdivisions. So when the future subdivisions to the west come in and we need to make that road connection finally, now we're, instead of 3 lots, it'd be 1 lot. And one of the creative solutions discussed tonight, which I think is a fair discussion. But if it, now in that scenario, it's 1 lot responsible for the entire upgrade of this stretch of road.
Would it necessarily be the
concept
same
is
stretch depending on where that house was put? Would it be the same length of road?
It would be evaluated, but with the data we have tonight, it would be that stretch of the road,
Probably.
because that's where the right of way would be taken.
When we have projects like that, we don't assign cost based on frontage, do we? I thought it was typically the cost is split amongst the affected properties more or less evenly.
So my understanding is the agreements we have for the single user, they understand that they're responsible for the entire cost to make their driveway into a road when it comes time to make that an actual road. And then I believe they forfeit their assessment rates, or how do they typically handle it?
Yeah, I mean, we've only done it for commercial users. We've done it for Nelson and we've done it for Park Place Storage. So we haven't had this exact same scenario. But those access encroachment agreements require them to pay their share, period. So it's one user, the distinction being instead of a single family residence, it's a business.
It's a cash generating
why it
enterprise. And not,
doesn't, you know,
I wouldn't treat a
work well
resident that
here.
way.
Yeah.
I don't think we should.
Kendra, the only other example, it's not exactly similar, it's Bechtel Farms at Rush Creek. There's that one driveway that goes on a future right of way. Was that handled? Was that just a driveway agreement in the right of way? That's more applicable to this scenario potentially.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, this is something we can work with them on how we handle it potentially. Now, in that case, the whole right-of-way is owned on the same, I believe, the same property owners on both sides, so it jives because that's all in their control, where this is off of their control. So these are details we'd have to work out with the city attorney.
And I'll also say in the Bechtold Farms case, the reason why we said that there was a hardship that prevented them from putting in the road is because there is a current single-family home that literally would need to be redeveloped before we could ever make that connection. So that one's a little bit less imminent. It's already been developed to some extent, and so it's pending future redevelopment, which is probably much further out into the future.
And that gave you the ground for the variance.
That was the ground for the variance, yes.
Makes sense.
I don't want to say this, but I will. Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
The preservation side of things where you take and double the
OSMP.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
double the available buildings and stuff, where you take 40, make it 20 and save the other 40, preserve all of that wetland and the elevations and all of those things to the east, and then give them 8 development rights with that 8 buildings on 40 acres.
So it's a slightly different concept. So I know the east side is mostly wetland, and so the open space and preservation plat does require for a good majority of it to be upland as well, and it can be wetland as well.
See, that's
So
why
that makes it
that's
a
why
little more
you
challenging.
got your job that you got. So good job. Thank you. I was thinking there's got to be a hole in it somewhere. So that's exactly it.
I know
So,
we've looked at it because this isn't the first time this property's come up, and that's been a suggestion. So it's not that it would be impossible, but also we've been, some of the other concept plans that we've reviewed for open space plats, we've talked about really wanting to see centralized open space, and so this is a really challenging parcel to get centralized open space because
Yeah.
it's mostly on the east side.
Possibly dumb question.
Such thing.
What if the homes, instead of being single family, were twin homes or duplexes?
Those aren't allowed in our, the most they could do a primary or principal structure and an ADU. That would be, but you wouldn't be able to sell the 2 different units
Right.
to different parties.
Okay.
So I think the sticking point is that we can't seem to find a way around whether it's now or if we could find a way to give some flexibility on the timing later, that cost still being prohibitive potentially for you. Right? I think I'm not seeing a way around that. But other than that, like the application, I would, like I said, I would suggest if whether it's through talking to staff or just a creative solution that you guys come up with, give me a call, give us a call, come on in, we'll have you at another meeting, and we'd love to take a look at it and see if we can figure something out.
you got all of us scratching our heads on it. So
Tough one.
Yeah, I mean, we like the.
it's a beautiful. It's a beautiful open field, and then the creek in the back and that whole area.
Everything we wanted.
It's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hope you find a way to do it.
Yeah. Okay. On to 7B, which is the St. Thomas concept plan. Yeah.
I was going to, but you gotta pull it up first so we can see the most important.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to that. Appreciate it.
Natalie, are you doing this one? Or?
Kendra is.
Kendra, perfect.
All right. This is a sketch plan for St. Thomas the Apostle Catholic Church, just down the road at the corner of County Road 10 and 116. Oops. That was a little tricky. The arrow is pointing to the parcel that we're specifically talking about. The church owns 3 parcels. The parcel that the church and the bulk of the facilities are on, right at the intersection. Then the middle parcel, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, and then they own a western parcel that they, and I don't recall if were gifted or purchased a piece of land that was part of the Rush Creek Reserve plat. And I appreciate that this is difficult to read, but the larger concept I think is important. So again, the existing church, there are some facilities, this is the church itself, if you can see my pointer, it is a little hard to see. Yeah, It is tricky to do. I'm gonna have you drive, Dwight. I thought I could do it, but I'm gonna have you drive so you can use the pointer. So the existing church will be removed and the new church constructed on the central parcel there. If you go to the next slide.
After the new church is moved.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and in fact, I believe, and the applicants can talk a little bit about this, I believe the intent is to remove some of the stained glass and other features from the existing church into the new church.
I hope so.
A lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. So the eastern two parcels are guided public, semi-public, and zone public institutional. When the initial comp plan was done, the existing churches were guided and zoned public institutional. The western parcel is guided low-density residential and zoned RSF2, and all of the parcels are in the urban service area and the southeast district. There's one strange thing that the survey shows the two eastern parcels as a single lot, but I think we're pretty certain that they're two, so we'll just need to clean that up on the survey. The church has been looking at this redevelopment project for a long time, and so we've talked a lot, and I have advocated that we combine the three parcels and make it a single site. But the code does not require that, and they do not want to do that. So they'll be keeping the three separate parcels, which we'll talk about one issue that does raise. But they're building about a 14,000 square foot church with 101 parking stalls. Places of worship are permitted in the PI district. And so, as I said, the existing church would go away when the new church is constructed. But most of the other facilities on the existing lot will remain. The community space, for example, the cemetery is on that eastern lot, and some, I think, described as picnic shelters, things like that. Next slide. So the concept plan shows compliance with the setbacks. Sorry, I thought I heard somebody.
Oh, no, I was just saying it's beautiful looking.
Oh, okay.
Concept.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, this rendering shows it is a brick building with cut stone accents. Does appear to comply with everything. It isn't clear entirely on the building height, so that's something we'll need to look at. Church spires are exempt from the building height ordinance, and there are some other things, but church spires are. And so we just need to take a look at it. It's possible the bell tower may require variance for that height. We need just a little more detail to see if that falls under the exemption or not. But
How tall would that be?
I don't believe it was dimensioned on the plan.
I didn't see it anywhere
I
either.
thought it was. I thought like 70 something, but I could be totally wrong.
You're right, Mr. Mayor, it does, the eve of the bell tower is at 70 feet.
How high is the current church now? A little bit taller than that.
I don't know if it is. But the church, the new church building, the central portion where the cross is on this building, that's at 54 feet.
Okay.
And again, it's a facade, so there'll just be some math that we'll need to do with the architect to figure out the heights. But I agree, I think it's a very attractive building. It does comply with the ordinance standards for the materials. And certainly in the, I think, still design stages, so there are some more details. But we'll figure out what that bell tower, how that fits under the exemptions or not. So next slide. The parking lot is 101 parking stalls. It does comply with the code requirements for a church facility of this size, which is based on basically seat space in the sanctuary. And I understand from Father and from the team here that the parking lot that they use south of 10 will no longer be needed. And so they will let that lease expire, and that crosswalk on 10 will be removed. And I think, can you point to that just for anybody that's not familiar with it? Right in front of the church, there's a crosswalk, and you all know, that's a busy road. It would be nice to eliminate that potential conflict. Hennepin County has looked at the plans, and the applicant's engineer has been meeting with them, so the church driveway will align with Commerce Street as desired, And currently, the plans show a right turn lane into the new church site. There is a variance that will be required. It's just an odd thing, because they're keeping the lot line between the existing community center cemetery lot and the new church. There'll be a driveway that crosses over into that site, and if I'm recalling correctly, mostly to go to the cemetery. And so we'll just need to work through that, but it'll be a 0 setback. Again, if we're, in the future, if we ever combine the lots, we'll eliminate that problem. But for now, because they function as one lot but are on 2 lots, there is a variance required for that. Next slide. I think a new monument is proposed on the new church parcel, and I want to raise this early. The existing sign on the corner is for the church, and when the church moves, you can't have that church sign on the corner. So it can only be for the uses that are on the site, and so that existing sign would need to be removed. Could it be replaced with something else? We'll have to work through that, but just want to put everybody on notice for that. The landscaping looks good with the, one thing that's missing is our buffer yards. So buffer yards are required to be planted on the north. It's a buffer yard D. There is a large wetland in that zone, but it is not exempted under the ordinance. And then on the west, adjacent to their own property that's zoned RSF2, buffer yard C is required. Neither of those have a tool in our ordinance to provide flexibility from those standards, so that is required. Again, not if we combine them. But we are not, and so because we're not, we don't pay park dedication either. So park dedication is not due on this. It's a church which has a different, or a public facility we would call it, which has some different standards for park dedication, but it is not being platted, so that is not required. The new church, if you go to the next slide, will eliminate the 2 existing driveways on the east parcel and the existing drive that serves the house on this middle parcel. So we'll be eliminating driveways onto County Road 10, which is good. The county cannot take additional right-of-way as part of this project because it's not a plat, and they, as I understand it, are comfortable as long as that new right turn lane can fit into the existing right-of-way. The new church will be connecting to municipal sewer and water. I think at this point, with the last conversation we had, I don't think anything on the existing site is planning to connect. But it would be available for them, but they would not be required to do that. There is an existing overhead power line on this site that will need to be relocated as part of the new church project. Next slide.
Just a quick question on connecting to water. Would that need to be an amendment to the contract with Maple Grove, or from our?
I don't think
No,
so.
Southeast was broadly in the original one, so the one-offs are really related to northeast.
Gotcha.
Which would kind of go away here in a couple months.
As long as it works, good by me.
Yeah, so utilities are there. It's a fairly easy connection for that. So the application for this facility, which is a significant improvement in downtown Corcoran, would be a simple site plan and drive aisle variance at this point. Potentially the church spire, but I'm hoping we could work around that. So that would go to Planning Commission and back to council, but it would not be a public hearing. They are anxious to get going and here tonight to get feedback from the council on their concept plan.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council? Dean?
I don't want to bring stuff up that causes issues either. There's no requirement to pave the current parking lot in front of the community room or anything like that, so there's no
You know me.
unexpected
I'm itching to
expenses.
get onto that east lot.
I know, that's why I asked you.
No.
That has nothing to do with this. That might be why they're keeping them all separate,
I suspect
Kendra.
it is. I
Huh?
suspect that's part
I'm
of it.
smarter than I look.
So
So
yes, they can remove the driveways without triggering yeah, driveways without triggering other improvements to that
And then
eastern parcel.
just thinking above everything, this is gonna go gangbusters, they're gonna populate to the point their congregation's gonna grow. This is my vision. And they'll be able to park there and walk over to the church, so.
Yeah, we did talk about that. They actually would need to come back and get an interim use permit for that.
To
So they
do
yeah, I mean, I don't
that
think
kind of
anybody out
parking.
there
I'm
watching to see if someone walks over,
I'm
but-
digging up all the stuff that could come out of all of this. I just,
The point, I mean, one of the conversations we had was, so how does it work with, like, things are a little different than when I was in Sunday school, I learned. So I said, you know, don't you walk from Mass over to Sunday school or back and forth? And they said, really, we don't have that much back and forth on a regular basis. You tend to go to the church or to the community center, so they feel like that's not going to be an issue. Yes, on Christmas, people will probably park at the community center and walk through, and I do think that's something we'll want to think about how we manage.
we can work through that kind of stuff.
Right.
Cool. That was everything, and obviously the cemetery can't move, so
Yeah, don't want it to.
don't wanna dig that.
I
whole thing
like
up
the
at all.
architecture a lot.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that sort of classic, small town, community church feel that I see in the graphic. I also think that this is appropriately sized for the area overall. I had a question on the bell tower, and if it's actually going to have working bells, and if so, when they will ring and for how long? I don't know if you can answer that, but.
Well, we haven't
Can you go up to the microphone, please?
You could just
People
name
at
and
home
address
can
for
hear.
the mic, the record.
Yeah, please state your name and address.
Sure. My name is Carl Thielen, and I am the chair of the Facilities Planning Committee at St. Thomas, which is a volunteer committee that we have worked for a number of years on our new church and understanding what our needs are and understanding what our opportunities are for our church. So we've worked so many hours, and we're just thrilled to be in front of you tonight to show the plan. Also want to thank your staff. We've met with them multiple times as we have worked through this process over the last 5 or 6 years, and they've been really helpful giving us guidance and giving us good advice on how to do our project. So, as it relates to the bell tower, it's a concept drawing at this point. Typically, our bells are to announce the start of Mass, and at this point, we have not discussed any plans to have some automated bells, that are in some cities that go off at certain times, and we haven't talked about that at all. So, and as it relates to the size of the bell tower and a few of those things, we'll work with staff to make sure that those are all the size that they need to be. They're concept drawings at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll add, I do like the bells. I live about maybe a mile from
Okay.
St. Thomas,
Yes.
and when I hear them, it just makes me feel like, oh, it's St. Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate the bells.
They can be overdone, but it sounds like that's not what they do. So that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm 3 miles away, and when the wind's out of the east, I'm sitting out on the front porch and.
It's way better than the
churches
train in
and
Loretto
stuff.
going off
Beautiful.
at 2 a.m.
Oh, gosh.
I love the train too, so I get it
I
from
do
all
not.
directions.
I do not like the train.
I also would mention how much we thought of St. Thomas's heritage, which has been
Yeah.
there since 1895.
Yeah.
So,
Only.
People came with horses to go to church at St. Thomas. So it's been an integral part of the fabric of the region, and as the city has grown. It's very important from our heritage perspective. Our little church is wore out. We have just playing balls. It's served its time. 30 years ago was the start of conversations starting to build a new church. Over time, we'll have the church there. There'll be a narthex there, which you saw in your drawing packet, which is a gathering space that we'll use after Mass. But over time, you can also see that there are potential future phases.
Yes.
And our hope is that after the church is built and paid for, that our next phase someday would be to do our church hall and to do our classrooms and to really move everything into the
And that
center of the property.
be
So
kind of to the
all
northwest?
contiguous, correct.
Gotcha.
It's on the west and northwest, yeah.
Gotcha.
So we really have a contiguous facility, and we really have really taken note of the setbacks. Right now, we have so much traffic noise in our church at 5:30. Our safety concerns are huge right
Big
now.
time.
Our ADA issues, you know, we have beautiful St. Therese that just has a beautiful facility, and we have steps getting to our church, and we have bathrooms down in the basement. So a lot of our improvements is not only to have more amenities and better size, but for safety, for accessibility for our members and the community that comes there. As many of you come to our parish festival, we have people from all over that come, and we want to make sure we have a welcoming and accessible area with good, safe parking as well. So we really appreciate your consideration and really thank staff for all the time they've spent with us as we have asked for their advice in the past.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you for your continued partnership with elections and other
Yes.
community events, not having
Huge.
public space. Thank you to St. Thomas community. We couldn't do a lot of things in the community without those collaborative partnerships.
That was a question I don't know if you have the answer to, and it has absolutely no bearing on the application. But do you know if during construction, would St. Thomas still be able to, be a voting precinct, do you think?
Yes.
Oh, great.
So really the operations of our parish in the current facility, especially from the parish hall, our festival, even up until the church is into construction, will all remain the same.
Awesome.
We are going to take, because we really want to bring our heritage forward and have people now and in the future enjoy that heritage, we're going to take the stained glass windows out of the church. Stained glass windows, from the research we've done, came from Germany.
Right.
Wow.
And were hand commissioned in Germany. Because of our splaying walls, if you actually go into the church walls look like this, and we have 3 beams going across. Well, those aren't for decoration. There's a cable.
There's cables
in
too.
between those to keep our walls. But unfortunately, our beautiful windows are being damaged because they're at a strange angle. And so we had to take 5 of them out that were critical condition and really may crumble. We actually had them restored up at Terre Haute Stained Glass Studio up in Cold Spring.
Yeah.
And they re-leaded and redid those entire windows, brought them back, and we put them back into the church. So we have 14 stained glass windows, and we're going to restore all of them and incorporate them all into the church. So that's just a really wonderful piece of the church's heritage that we want to keep forward and make sure.
Yeah, you don't want to get rid of that. That's
We have our bell that we'll incorporate into the church somehow. We have some beautiful statues that actually came from St. Jean down the road when that was destroyed in 1957 in a tornado. And there's a cemetery there. So we have elements from that church that are in St. Thomas that we're going to bring forward. So the heritage of our parish and of this region is really important, and we thought a lot about that as we've gone through this process, and also thought a lot about the look of the building too, that would fit the area, and kind of the agrarian tradition of the city of Corcoran. So we're excited to continue our approval process, and thank you all for the feedback.
Thank you. Yeah, I think in general,
Bell tower.
There's some
Can't
things
be
to
tall
work through
enough
with
for
staff
me.
that
Facade.
absolutely can be worked
Have
through.
at it.
But other than that,
Yeah.
Right across 116, don't we have unlimited height in that downtown mixed-use area anyway?
unlimited.
Yes.
Really?
Hold on, damn you. It's,
Are we?
hold on, I had just looked
That
at
seems
it.
dangerous.
I thought it was 45.
No, we do not have, a height limit in the district standards for the, what was my looking at that?
While she's looking that up,
Yep.
the pancake breakfast was outstanding on Sunday. Wednesday nights, you're doing meals then too, so.
Awesome.
Yes, we have meals for folks that come for faith formation, which is on Wednesday nights.
Yep.
So Sunday
Just
school is
saying.
now on Wednesdays.
Tater tot hot dish last night, everybody.
Nice.
So it's part of our southeast district plan because height.
But I don't think you'd want to change the zone because it kind of fits. in
No,
the
I
public
don't, but I think.
I'm just saying
like
in
that
terms of
it's
fit to the area.
consistent, Yeah.
You could potentially have a 15-story building across the street from it. So constraining the bell tower to 45 feet or 35 feet might not be as important as it would be if it was surrounded by houses.
Potentially, yeah, I think it's something that can be worked through with staff. I'm not particularly worried about it.
Excited.
Multi-story
Yeah, I'm
building
really
here
excited.
too are encouraged. So I can look further to make sure there's not another building height that I'm overlooking in our code, but it's not clear in the DMU. But we do, the idea of the downtown mixed use is that it would be multi-story buildings, yes.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's something that can be worked through with staff, like the other couple of small
Yeah.
things. Any sense
Thank
on
you,
what
guys.
your timeline might be?
Well, yes, we would, assuming we get approval process through this spring, we would like to start doing site improvements in this year,
Awesome.
2025, and get all of our land site improvements done. We're going to bring some fill in and take care of the grading. We'd love to let everything settle for a year,
Mhm.
and then construction would begin in 26.
Gotcha. Fantastic.
Neat.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
Good job.
Alrighty. On to, oh, my iPad froze. There we go. No, froze again. 7C.
You guys don't need to stay for this.
No, you're more than welcome to head out.
You're welcome to stay,
Appreciate
but
it, Stan, for that. Let's see.
I didn't do slides, yeah. So for 7C, this is the continuation of our commercial and industrial district ordinance update. The city council was provided data from 6 cities that were reviewed to just get a gauge of what other cities are doing, see if there's any other solutions out there that might reach some of our goals. Specifically tonight, I'm hoping to get guidance on the answer or the questions outlined in the summary portion of the packet, to be able to come back with a draft for you either at the end of March, although that is a very big meeting, so it might be better to come back in April.
I've heard that's a terrifying meeting.
Yeah, it's a terrifying meeting for me as well. And I have to start next week with that meeting, so.
Fun.
But anyways, so specifically, how do we had kind of had a concept discussion about potentially looking at a height-related transition from residential areas. I didn't really find anything very unique in looking at the 6 cities. Again, the 6 cities involved were Independence, Afton, Medina, Forest Lake, Hugo, and East Bethel. We had looked at these cities because they have a somewhat similar development pattern in that they have at least some MUSA, but they also have some rural as well. So trying to balance the conflict between that arises and while trying to have new development that we are proud of. So anyways, if we wanted to look at a height-related transition, I didn't find too much. What I did find consistently is many cities rely on a larger setback from residential for commercial and industrial uses, and that seems to offset some of the height that you get with those other types of buildings. However, we have a 50-foot setback from residential. We already have something a little higher in place. I didn't see it unusual to have that increase to 100. We could certainly talk about that. I did find Minnetrista, which is kind of one I threw in the mix. They had a CUP process for buildings over a certain height. So that'd be another way to potentially handle that. So those were the 2 that I noticed of significance. How would the city like to proceed with architectural standards or a window requirement for our commercial industrial buildings? I believe actually this was more focused on industrial type buildings. And you know, how we could also maybe handle it in our business park. I continue to stand by that our Northeast District standards are already a fairly high standard. One thing we don't really discuss too much is window and transparency requirements, and I did see that in several of the cities reviewed. So again, what would we like to change? With that, just keeping in mind, the Northeast District only applies in the Northeast District. So what do we want to maybe incorporate from the Northeast District into just our standard light industrial district? How would the council like to proceed on the calculation of impervious surface limits? I personally would love to see some flexibility in code that allows us to apply it on a per plat basis. I think it allows for more green space to potentially be consolidated more to the residential side, so it acts more as a buffer, and then have more of the commercial users. We saw a concept plan a year and a half ago where they did that. It didn't move forward, but basically had the commercial uses closer to County Road 101, and then they had put their stormwater ponding in an outlot, shared outlot, and if you calculated it overall, they were well below the impervious surface limit, and then that also provided a larger buffer between the residential uses to the west and the commercial uses to the east. So I think it can allow for some creativity that we don't necessarily get when we are going on a per lot basis. I think Medina had a fairly decent example of how we could address that in our code, providing some flexibility. I didn't quite like theirs either, but I did propose some language that we could discuss.
Natalie, real quick on that, when you talk about that, as far as mitigation ponds, those kind of things, what would be the solution to curb the noise from that commercial across that to?
Space, trees, you can, there's fences they have to be pretty tall and they have the visual, so they're not favorite, but yeah, trees, vegetation and space would be ways to
And
get
the place
sound.
the place I was looking at was the corner of Stieg Road and 101, that when that came in, it was a significant distance from the back of the yards,
That's exactly
back
what I
of
was
the houses
talking about. Yes.
to the parking lots and stuff, but there was nothing much that would stop the noise other than, you know, pine, spruce, all of the stuff that would have to
So
go
keep
in.
in mind, we do still have our buffer ordinance, which requires significant planting between.
So
So that's
mounds
already
and
something we have in place.
Mounds, berms, and then,
And just
okay.
a variety of trees.
I like that.
Yes, I would say especially for the D buffer, which is typically required for, it's either C or D, which is typically required between low density and commercial industrial.
Yeah.
That's significant plantings.